Now there's a wide range of respectable shooters on the PlayStation 1, but when it comes to choosing one of the more graphically impressive examples, Iron Hander is the clear winner. Though graphics should be the least important factor when it constitutes a good game, the phenomenal and practical visuals of Iron Hander serve not only to make the game look good, but help its gameplay excel at the same time. What helps it stand out is the sheer diversity in its design. Instead of simply providing one viewpoint of the action, the camera will consistently change perspective and reveal the intricacies of both the world as well as each enemy you encounter. From the little police drones complete with sirens and light bars to the hulking mech bosses bursting with weaponry. At times they can take up the entire screen and look absolutely incredible, especially when considering how old the game actually is. You'll often find the screen littered with explosions and various other effects, and thanks to the range of weapons on offer, a whole host of visual flourishes are present throughout, which really make each weapon feel all the more unique upon using them. The backgrounds are just as impressive as well. If you've never seen Iron Hander up and running, it really is a sight to behold, so if you're looking for a neat little shooter to get into, it would make for a great option. Legend of Dragoon is an RPG that released quite late in the life cycle of the PS1. It often gets overlooked due to the popularity of its contemporaries such as the Final Fantasy series, but in my opinion it is not only one of the best RPGs available on the system, but one of the better looking ones as well. From the rocky plains to the soaring mountain tops and unique cities that occupy the environment, they all bring a distinct style to the table and help the overall journey shine. Sure, outside of battle nearly every background is completely pre-rendered and static, but that doesn't stop it from standing out due to its well-crafted representation. Once inside battle, the visuals spring to life, with each and every attack providing new and fascinating ways to draw the player in. From basic sword techniques to the more intricate magical abilities that see the camera zooming in on the action and providing some of the most cinematic moments of the game. Each character is lovingly detailed and unique, and although they don't hold the same high level of detail as the environments, they are still well executed and don't falter the overall graphical potential of the experience. To be honest, they really come into their own during some of the most well-directed FMV sequences. There is an absolute abundance of these scenes throughout the adventure that really add to the overall quality of the game. If you've exhausted the usual RPG suspects on the system, Legend of Dragoon will provide one of the best if you've yet to give it a go. In terms of graphical fidelity, Vagrant Story's visual style pushed the original PlayStation to its absolute limits. It possesses one of the highest polygon counts of any game to appear on the system, and presents each and every animation in an outstandingly smooth and fluid fashion. Matching this aspect of the visual aesthetic is the great variety of locations that showcases some of the best work Square had ever produced. Complementing all of this is the fully 3D camera that helps the player take in each and every environment, and due to this there's not a pre-rendered background in sight. Sure, it might not be that impressive by today's standards, but seeing this up and running on the PS1 back in the day was an unforgettable experience. As you would expect, each character and enemy received the same level of love and attention. Each of them present themselves in entirely novel ways. Adding to this is how they interact, which takes on a somewhat comic book style, with each section of dialogue being presented in speech bubbles, which at first felt quite out of place. Vagrant Story is hands down one of the greatest RPGs ever created, and if you still haven't played it, now is the perfect time to do so. Visually, Gran Turismo 2 does not represent a huge improvement over the previous entry, but that was hardly even possible considering that the first game already managed to reach new graphical heights on the system. It features the same stunning and realistic car models as the first game, with a few minor details having been improved. One of note has to be how reflections are presented on each vehicle, which now cascade in a much more believable fashion. The variety of racetracks manage to depict each location in a plausible manner, but never see the same level of detail as the actual vehicles themselves. This has kind of been an ongoing issue for the series as a whole, but in my opinion it doesn't detract from the overall visual splendor that's on offer. You'll find yourself being able to identify various cars just by looking at them, which is a real testament to the way they are presented. From Subaru to Nissan and Jaguar, there's an insane amount of choice when it comes to each vehicle. Although the game is often plagued by visual glitches that could have the potential to take you out of the experience, for its time it is still one of the best looking racing games on the system. As the last mainline entry in Square's flagship series on the PS1, Final Fantasy IX pulled no punches when it came to visual fidelity. The first thing that will stand out is the immense amount of locations that are expertly crafted and presented. Sure, they are all pre-rendered, but each of them managed to portray a well-defined style that helps the kingdom burst into life. Each of the characters rely on a style named chibi that represents them in a sort of cartoon fashion. It's a step away from the more realistic aesthetic that was present in the 8th entry of the series, but in my opinion it helps the experience stand out and provides the overall adventure a sort of playful nature. Despite the unique aesthetic of the in-game world, once in battle the action dazzles with flair. Each magical ability and skill propels the action with confidence and style. Summons eat up the battlefield, with each and every effect filling the screen and lending every encounter a sense of majesty only found from the Final Fantasy series. Now, of all three PlayStation era games, number 9 is the one that has visually aged the best. The game's vibrant visuals greatly contrast the futuristic and urban settings of 7 and 8. The sort of medieval style really harkens back to the early days of Final Fantasy, and ultimately for me makes the overall experience one of the best, especially when compared to the various other RPGs on the system. Capcom managed to build upon and surpass everything that was presented in the original with the release of Resident Evil 2. The location of Raccoon City really helped ground the experience in reality and made it all the more relatable to players who experienced it. The visuals were a big improvement, in particular the level of detail afforded to the enemies, which were now presented in a much more believable fashion. New animations and a range of differing styles made the zombies feel a lot more unique and helped make the idea of a city that had been taken over by a virus a lot more convincing when compared to the more repetitive nature of enemies in the first outing. Little details like monsters catching on fire, characters limping as their health went down and turning their head in the direction of something suspicious, all made the game so realistic that it made the original look like child's play. Matching this was the amount of locations that you would see throughout the game. In early Resident Evil fashion, it all remained pre-rendered, but the level of diversity is what really stood out. From the shady back alleys of the city to the exquisite presentation of the police station, right down to the sewers and secret dwellings of Umbrella, it never managed to feel stale throughout the experience. At this point, anyone watching this is bound to have already played it, but if you are one of the few that haven't, it is still well worth going back and checking out. Ridge Racer Type 4 has to be one of the most visually pleasing racing games on the system. Of course, many people will argue that Gran Turismo beats it, but in my opinion, the overall graphical style and more importantly, the solid frame rate is what helps it out. It's one of those games that demonstrates the sheer technical prowess of the PS1. The texture work, detail, and even aesthetics of the game managed to stand up to this day. The first note is the way each car and location are granted the same level of detail, from the sunsets at Wonder Hill to the fireworks and helicopters as shooting hoops. Each track is fully alive when compared to the range of other races available on the system. The car detail is impeccable. They all especially look incredible during the replay mode that sees them giving off trails of light that emanate from the brakes, which help establish one of the game's many unique aesthetics. Topping this off is the subtle use of motion blur that helps depict the illusion of speed and makes each and every race all the more engaging. As I mentioned earlier, despite the really fast pace of the races, as well as the complex car models, Namco managed to avoid nearly any slowdowns whatsoever, with the frame rate remaining smooth and consistent throughout. This aspect is so important to racing games, and this is one of the main reasons why Ridge Racer Type 4 has managed to stand the test of time. Although Chrono Cross makes many mistakes from a gameplay perspective, one aspect it absolutely nailed was its visual design. Colourful and lush backgrounds coat the world of Chrono Cross, and the character models are all detailed and manage to blend in well with the backgrounds. The range of locations you'll find yourself visiting throughout the experience really lend a sense of grandeur to the overall adventure, not often found in lesser RPGs on the system. The characters themselves are depicted in a great amount of detail, and even manage to interact with certain elements of the environment such as mirrors that help them feel grounded within the world. Once in battle, Chrono Cross takes on a life of its own, more so than any other RPG I've ever played. It has over 40 playable characters, and all of them have unique movements and spells. Seeing all of them carry out these abilities was breathtaking, with each of them bringing a range of effects and visual flourishes to the action that elevated it far beyond anything that had been seen before. It really is amazing just watching the game play out, mainly because it feels as though you're playing a game game that was way ahead of its time. Square consistently upped the ante as far as graphics go with each and every passing game, and will forever help Chrono Cross stand out as a true achievement. The PS1 was no stranger to incredible fighting games, from the various offerings from Capcom and other companies that helped the genre flourish on the system. Players were never at a loss when it came to new and exciting experiences, but if there is one go-to fighting game on the system, it has to be Tekken 3. The character models look especially impressive. Each of them are intricately detailed, and there is barely any pixelation that was present in almost any PlayStation game. Sure, the characters are slightly blocky, but still far superior to almost any of the other fighting games on the PlayStation. The backgrounds look like they've had a lot of work put into them, and although they have been downgraded from the arcade release, they still show lovely amounts of detail and a fair amount of realism. You'll find yourself being taken to a wide range of locations such as temples, bamboo forests and dojos that all add a unique flavour to the on-screen action. Matching the sheer level of detail is the smooth and effortless animation of each fighter. It all manages to present each single move in a truly believable manner, and was a real step above the rest when it came to how Tekken 3 played. Putting the third entry side by side with its contemporaries really showcases the amount of work that went into preserving the quality of the arcade release, and was a testament to the power that was locked inside Sony's first console. Metal Gear Solid was an experience that truly defined what a video game could be. It didn't shy away from presenting everything in 3D and stayed consistent throughout the duration of the adventure. Each cutscene took advantage of the in-game engine, all the while adding in various effects such as motion blur to help create some of the most cinematic and memorable moments in gaming history. Sure, by today's standards it doesn't look as impressive as it once did, but seeing this for the first time in 1998 was a real landmark for the PlayStation 1, and for the first time it proved that video games as a medium were a viable option when it came to conveying a compelling and engrossing narrative. Now, the experience was all split up into various areas, with each of them managing to portray the inner workings of the Alaskan base you find yourself infiltrating, from heliports used for transporting materials to underground lava pits used for producing metal. The level of realism was unparalleled at the time, and has helped Metal Gear Solid live up to its legacy. But it's the little touches that litter the adventure which add to the overall believability of the events that take place, such as footprints left in the snow to your breath slowly dissipating in the cold Alaskan air. It all came together to create one of the finest games to ever see life on the PS1. Well, that does it for the video. Don't forget to hit subscribe and follow me on all the socials to stay up to date on any future videos. Until then, take care and thanks for taking the time to watch this video.